interview Mr. Rico Paganini. He is a researcher, journalist, and the author of the Legacy's Trilogy. He is also the founder of the EVOL Forum, an integral organization working towards the unfolding of personal and collective consciousness. The EVOL Forum is mainly concerned with three questions, which are: who are we, where do we come from, and where do we go? And on this note, I leave the stage to Mr. Paganini.
Thank you, and great to be here with you and to dive into these really urgent questions about the situation of today's humanity. And so I would like to start on the points that we were talking about, like the first starting with the kind of opportunities also out of this current global crisis. And from my point of view, the opportunities, they arise when we use this, let's say, free time for ourselves by pausing, calming, and coming to rest in our lives, in our thoughts, and also in our souls. Prayer and meditation are always very helpful, therefore. And also by asking ourselves questions about the meaning and use of this kind of Western life system that also makes finally possible that a virus like this can spread and that shutdown happens. And so it's also by asking ourselves questions about the meaning of life finally and how we actually want to live ourselves. Also asking probably how we can back into harmony with nature and with the environment. And these are finally always questions that are important to ask ourselves in order to find our own personal way. Then this, like you mentioned, Ludovic, finally leads us also back to the three questions of being, that are who are we and where do we come from and where are we going? And I have captured these questions and answered them in these 3 books of the trilogy. And we were talking also about a kind of new paradigm. And the main one would probably be that we recognize each other and respect each other and spiritually unite in love to implement the solutions finally that are already available to the current major problems. And yeah, you asked me also about my life journey and how I would like address today kind of a key message. And for me, the key for this time that we call the time of turning, which began in 2018 and will end around 2024. So this time windows appears already in the 4 cycle calendars. A lot of people know already the Mayan calendar, but there are 4 also: the Vedic, the astronomical calendar, and the Great Pyramid calendar. And they all have an outer circle of 26,000 years and are based on the galactic conjunction that, according to NASA research, this is the cycle in which our solar system once orbit around the central sun in the Pleiades constellation within our galaxy. And so when one cycle ends and a new begins, a lot of things happen on Earth and everything seems kind of to get out of control, just as we can observe in nearly all areas of social life and economy in the last 20 years. So this time holds really great opportunities and possibilities, but also a lot of manipulation and destruction if we don't stop also our destructive lifestyle and environmental degradation. And the key, like already said, is always the love and the respect for ourselves and for our fellow human beings, also for the animal, plants, and really all of nature. And so for the Western civilization has separated, quite deeply or completely humans from nature, and see and use our misuse, or use or misuse, however you call it, of Mother Earth, and just see her as a resource or food supplier. And for me, it is now about connecting and experiencing what we call the old and the new knowledge, to bring them together, as we must reflect on what we actually are, or finally ever have been, because we are light beings from the divine creation who respect and protect and preserve the earth and the life on it. This should be our task. But we have been doing quite exactly the opposite for the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, and we should now stop, take stock, and then realign our systems in all fields of human life. And to do this, for me, it's the most important that we really recognize ourselves and our potential. So for humanity as a whole, only changes in the individual human beings change humanity in the mass consciousness. So therefore, I have written also the vision, the manifesto, and the 7 steps for this time of turning, that anyone can quite easily understand and apply. What were the other questions? Also about the life journey. I grew up in Chur in the Swiss mountains. I graduated from the Swiss Hotel Touristic and Management School after my commercial education. Then I switched quite out and made some years music, and worked at radios, in music magazine. And after that, I developed teaching materials for the choice of professions and built them up in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. This is kind of educational work. But since the age of 21, I wanted to know, just also for myself, the answers on these 3 main questions of being. And therefore, I spent now nearly 40 years researching and comparing, experimenting, and in order to develop this book trilogy and this overall view leading into these 7 steps for the time of turning. And finally, it's all about developing our own consciousness and the mass consciousness to share experiences, and thus enable also the others to have their own experiences that lead them into their new reality. And so my work is finally, on one hand, the vocational teaching materials on the choice of professions for young people, parents, teachers. And on the other hand, the historical and spiritual teaching, also materials and tools, templates for the people in this amazing 21st century. And remind me, what was...
Then we can maybe talk about how your home contributed to your transformative journey.
It started finally with the original process, and I really learned to using this old saying that man grows by resistance. So we learned the most that way, and also what we were talking about, the crisis and failures. I have followed for more than 20 years quite consequently the hermetic laws of cause and action, cause and effect, and have always tried to find and eliminate the causes so that the negative effect stops. And we have always also tried with our movement with EVOL to compensate for them, to the contrary, into solutions. So this law of cause and effects maybe sounds too simple, but it actually works very well. And yeah, what home means for me. Or the question was also, if I remember well, how is the meaning in our country or in our language?
Yeah, either that or yeah, just your personal interpretation of what home is. Is it maybe a place? Is it a feeling? Is it people? Is it a physical place or not? Like we've heard so many definitions, and we would be very keen on hearing yours.
Yeah. So generally, my home is as it's probably for every human being, also kind of a refugee or undisturbed place to live and retreat, evolve, and just me, that allows me just to be myself and to be in my personal process. Very important for me about home is also the nature and the garden around the house, because for me this connection is really important. And in this environment is also like my home office as the hub of the consciousness work. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the one term could be houses, but I call them rather kind of rooms or realms of being and interaction. And so for me, like to say, the first house or realm is my body and the temple within me, with the divine sparks that we have, each and everyone inside our hearts. Kind of the second house is my family, my friends. The third house or realm is really my house where I'm living in, with the center, with the altar, the garden around. And the fourth house I would call Switzerland and Europe, as the area I majorly living in. The fifth would be the world and the nature in our solar system. The sixth, even on a bigger scale, it's the galaxy, the universe we live in deep or oneness, even if we don't recognize it. And the seventh house, finally, or realm, is for me kind of the soul, or I think it's ether realm, which connects all the souls that serve Earth and humanity. And so for me, this is like the based on the oneness, and what I try also with EVOL and the aligned organizations like Home for Humanity, Ciel Foundation, or One Ancient Future, Asse Gaia, Fountains, and others, to interact and co-create together on this, what we call like new global consciousness.
That's an extremely interesting definition of home, and that yeah, it's important to acknowledge that a home can actually take different forms. We do not necessarily have only one home. Thank you for this insight. And I would like to come back to the concept of the time of turning. So if I understand well, the time of turning would be a period of transition, of change. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Based on these 4 cycle calendars, there is like an overlap of 70 years. So this process already started in the 60s and 70s of the last century. And within this time of turning, there is kind of a turning point of 7 years. And this is now between 2018 and 24. So guys, we are living in an amazing, incredible time. So let's use these opportunities and not fall into this resignation or fear that we can feel now around the world.
Okay, and so my question would be, how can we make the best out of this time? Or which paradigm shift could we cultivate during this time, but also what are the traps? Because you said it can also be very deceptive and there could be some manipulation. It's not necessarily positive. I mean, there's some work to do, right? Could you maybe expand on that?
The key finally is consciousness in all these levels, because just with a certain consciousness, you recognize also what's really going on in this world that seems to be out of control. So if you are just based on the main information that we get in mainstream media, we have just a really small insight on what's really going on. And so from my experience, the main thing is first to get conscious about who we self really are as human beings from the deity creation, and to recognize the enormous potential that is like slumbering in us. You remember Albert Einstein mentioned once we just use 2 or 3% of our brain possibilities, and I would say we probably use just 1%, not percent, but promille, for example, of our soul potential. And as long as we don't recognize this matrix in ourselves, which is really amazing, based on the so-called Merkaba, until then we cannot really have the full picture on all what is surrounding us. So for me, the first step is like to recognize ourselves and then to walk the path of our own experience. And that's what we try to support with background information and practical tools so that people can do this process by themselves. But it finally starts always with a certain base of consciousness, of knowledge, and then to start to act and really walk this own path. It's nothing that you can have just get a theory or an information and then you know it or it happens. It's really a personal process. And as many or as more individual humans are walking this path of their own experience, this changes the mass consciousness, because the mass consciousness is just a summary of the consciousness of all the individuals. So if you want this to reach this so many times called in or asked in today's time, this mass consciousness in another way of seeing things and behaving and like living together, it always starts in the personal process. So that's why we try to give and deliver, especially also to the young generation, this background information and these tools to get into their own experience. Because if you don't have your own experience, you know it for yourself. People tell you things like in these interviews and you can believe it or not. But if you go once for yourself into this process and then you have the same experience, it's not anymore about belief, because then you know it because you have your own experience. So this is key for us also.
So yeah, to take the mass consciousness to the next level, you said that actions have to be enacted on a personal, individual level. But so which steps could, for example, Stephanie and I follow to really engage in this process and start the journey? I mean, maybe we're already on the journey, but how can we pursue it in a meaningful way that will indeed take the mass human consciousness to a superior level of understanding?
I just switch shortly into the 7 steps. So I just tell you these ones because this gives the best overview. So the first one would be to recognize ourself and the primordial light of creation, because this is the source where we come from. The second is to unfold your potential. The third, to experience love as the key for everything, finally. The fourth is to join the community of the souls. The fifth, to discover the old vision in a completely new way. This is what also Rama and Alexander and me talk a lot about, bringing together this old and the new knowledge. The 6th is to create your own new reality. And the 7th is to arise together in this time of turning. And for each one, there is always like a part of information and a part of the practical steps to bring this into your daily life.
Yeah, the journey ahead seems fascinating, but also not an easy one. But thank you very much for sharing this step. I think it's immensely valuable for us.
Maybe it sounds like Ludovic, but you will not know how easy it probably is until you're not trying it out. Because I really tell you, it's much easier than you expect.
Okay, I mean, maybe I've already started. I'm not sure. I hope I have, and otherwise I have to get back. I have to start it very soon. Do you have? I'm sure Stephanie has a lot of questions. I'm gonna let her jump back in.
I would like to, rebound on that, because, well, you said it's easy, but I feel like I'm also quite on the path for a couple of years now, and I always struggle, I guess, with the second step, like the evolving. How did you mention evolving, right? Your skills,
like to unfold your potential.
Unfold was the word. Unfold your potential. But I often feel like I'm struggling with that. Do you maybe, out of your own journey, how did you unfold your potential? Could you maybe, especially in crisis situations like these, often people find a trigger there to do this. Do you maybe have an own story of where you were able to do that, like really getting from a breakdown to a breakthrough?
Yeah, several ones. And like I also mentioned before, we try always to solve it based on this hermetical law of cause and reaction. And the main thing first is that you always see what was the chain element before, like of cause and reaction. So you find the cause, and then you see, oh, this cause was also a reaction, and you go back and back and back until you have really the first cause, because if you solve this, all the others will disappear. And about the potential, first, and this is also a part of these 7 steps, to unfold your potential, first you need to reflect. And this is in a process, because we cannot evolve our potential if we don't know it first. So it's like an inner process, an inner profiling with several questions of reflection that you define, like where you see your potential right now and in which direction you want to increase it. So, and if you bring these 3 points together, then it's quite easy. But a lot of people just say, if you just say, I will evolve my or raise my potential, and you don't know exactly what it's meant, because potential is also a combination of different aspects within ourselves, and you have first to reflect them. And if you know them, it will be much easier to go into this process, because then you're working on different topics. And another urgent point is to stay tuned and to bring this into your daily process, because if you do it just once and then you forget it for several months, and then maybe you remember, oh yeah, I was thinking about or have started there. So it's really to bring it into an ongoing process. And this needs a little bit of self-discipline. But if you really would love to go this path, it's really worth to, because it's the most amazing, incredible adventure that you can have on Earth. There is no movie that is so interesting and a kind of an adventure than your own life and your own journey.
Beautiful, yes. Ludovic, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, just rebound on that. But what if you're stuck. Because to be very honest with you, a couple months ago, I started really meditating, trying to raise my consciousness, to unfold my potential, to raise the frequency of my energies. But since that corona, all that crisis, I feel terribly stuck, to be honest. And I mean, I haven't meditated in almost a month. And I feel that I'm stuck on the journey and that I'm even going backwards. So what could be done in such situations?
Mm. It depends if your view is really right, the right one. Because, you know, there is always like stop and go, stop and go. And the question is how we see these stops. If we see them as a problem or as like the end of a process, or if we see it like as a part of the process. And also there, for example, you were in quite a good mood, and then happened this incredible virus hoax, like I call it, all over the world. And the first thing that I would propose is that you reflect deeply for yourself. What was the point or the information or the situation or the feeling that like brought me out of the process? What is really the point that stucks me to go to find this original cause? And then just to focus on this and bringing in like into another view, because there are always two sides. So there is a big German man, Gustav Grossmann, who created a system which he calls to evolve yourself and to see like how you can do this. And he always makes like the most worst point that you can describe. And so this would be your situation, and then put in front of it the best point of view on this and how it can serve to you, because they are always like implemented or existing inside them. And then I would just go ahead into this process and try to solve this point and see how you feel and going on. But you have also to be aware that if you are quite sensitive, like I am also as a medium, and then it's also possible, Ludovic, that you just feel the mass consciousness. And this is quite heavy. So this can have a big influence on how you're feeling every day. And what we have done every day or 2 or 3 times a day was to connect, to pray and meditate, to bring more light and motivation and faith into the mass consciousness, like to rebalancing it. And while we were doing this, this happens always also in ourselves. So the need is now for a real positive aspect, because whatever happens on earth, you are a primordial soul on your way with your own experiences. And now you're making this experience also with the virus, not more, not less. But don't give it like too much value. I mean, what I tried, what helped me is always to relativieren, to what means in English relativieren?
Relativieren. I mean, I have the exact word.
Yeah. To give the relation, you know, you can say, oh, this virus was the worst thing ever happened on Earth. It never was like this before. It will kill so many people. And if you just see it isolated. But if you put on the other side, the other point of view, you can also say, okay, we have every year in winter a virus going around the world. Sometimes die more, sometimes die less, but normally are dying the old people or the people that are already sick. And for example, we have now about, I think in Switzerland, 1,600, 1,800 deaths caused by the coronavirus. And you can put this in relation and say, in, I guess it was winter 15, 16, we have more than 2,500 deaths in Switzerland cause of the yearly virus. So we are not even arrived there at this point. And when this happened, nobody was talking about, even you had just small notes in the newspaper saying this year died more people on the yearly virus. And the coronavirus now, it's a SARS-based virus, like the ones that we have in the last 4 years. So it's nothing new. And it's also not new that the viruses change some of their influences or missing the word again, their action. So I'd always try to see things from different points of view, and this to have like a more general view, or like an observing view. If you look about quantum physics, to be the observer of yourself, of your feelings and thoughts, and to be the observer on what's going on in the realm or in the house around you. And this is Earth right now. So, and then if you bring this in certain relation, the influence disappears immediately. This makes sense?
Yes, very much. I'm just silent for a moment because I'm trying to write, and like, I mean, I know I have the recording, but I'm trying to write some key points.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. Yeah, the key would be to put things into perspective, to look at it from an objective standpoint, and like not, as you said, like dramatize. Because I definitely agree. Some like each year the flu kills thousands of people in Switzerland, and even more in all Europe and in the world, and we need to put the coronavirus into perspective with what happened before. But because of course, as a standalone event, it's terrorizing the way we are speaking about it, but put in context and relative to other things, it's sure it becomes more, something easier to deal with.
And it's, I mean, it has also many kind of good effects. If you, for example, if you look at from the view of nature, the pollution, it's less, the air, it's better. So there are always also positive aspects. And we started there at the interview when I mentioned that we should use this time of less work, or I mean, for myself, I have not less work. But many people have, you know, they don't go to work or in school, and now it depends if they just go back in their homes and being afraid, or if they go in their houses and just make things like TV or computer games or others to not think on what's going on, or if you use this time to make reflections about yourself, your life, and what's going on Earth, and raise your consciousness therefore.
Yeah, absolutely. Using this time wisely is key, and I've been blaming myself for not doing it enough since I felt stuck. But yeah, thank you very much for this insight. I think they're very helpful, and I'm sure they're going to help the future audience very, very much as well. And so my next question, which is very much in line with everything we've discussed so far, is that during all our discussion, we talked very much about reflecting on ourselves and tuning into our inner world. And so my question is, how can the modern man, like the Western man, as you described it, one that is very much disconnected from nature and from himself, tune in, first stop following distraction in order to tune into his or her own inner world, inner temple?
I would see it the opposite, because if they first are in their inner temple, they are not able anymore to be destructive. It's also like cause and action again. I mean, the first is, if you want to reconnect with nature, go out in nature. It has not that we have to live there, but just to making, for example, a walk every day in nature, or in the weekend to spend 2 or 3 hours of the weekend in nature, and to be there and see the beauty of it, and to recognize how everything is alive. I mean, it starts with the mineral realms. It's scientifically proven. I mean, stones have an energy. Plants, living beings, animals, all this beauty of nature and these landscapes, and to recognize that we as a living being are part of these holistic realms with all these different kind of life. And if you recognize really that you are a divine being inside this wonderful creation, you will feel better yourself, and you will automatically, if you recognize all this surrounding beautiful life, you will raise your consciousness also and not act anymore in this destructive way. I mean, if you recognize the sacred in a plant or in an animal, you cannot kill them anymore or just destroy them just for nothing. So that's what I also meant in the second part of the answer, that if we really recognize what we are in, and in what a wonderful universe we are living, you start automatically to act in another way.
So contemplation would actually be a key part of the process. Just observe, realize, and reflect.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's so interesting and amazing. Also, what's going on in ourselves, in our hearts, in our feelings, in our thoughts, in our soul. So my life finally started when I started to live this way. It's like a rebirth.
Yeah, I think that as soon as we hang up, I'm gonna take my car and drive towards the mountain and countryside.
Yes, I
For
could
real.
one more. Great. You see, the mass consciousness always is raising.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole truth. I'm definitely gonna do that. I have my car envisioned right now, and
Yeah.
I mean, we have all the time in the world now, but once we're done, I'm gonna go drive towards the mountain. Would you like to jump in?
And you will see, maybe you find even a way without driving to go into nature.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I mean, just like where I am, there is nature, but if I just take the car for like 15 minutes, I can really be in full nature and like not hear any other cars or like building or anything, you know, like it's really true nature, if I may say so.
Oh, then it's worth it.
It's worth the 15 minutes drive for sure.
Dive in, huh? And then next week, Stephanie and me will make an interview with you about your experience.
Of course.
Great. Talking about being embedded in nature, I would like to sort of direct this discussion to Home for Humanity again, the initiators of this interview. Is there something like one of your visits or experiences that you had at Home for Humanity that particularly affected or inspired you for your own work? What did you take out of your visits there?
Yeah, I mean, I love Ram and Alexander, as you probably also do. And we developed very similar goals and solutions they have done with Home for Humanity, as we did with EVOL. EVOL, which says mirrored like love, as we call it EVOL, or the love movement. Therefore, we could exchange really valuable experiences and learn a lot from each other. And yeah, Home for Humanity also shows ways into a new collective consciousness and into new ways of human life. So yeah, we are very aligned. So we continue there at the Humanity Charter or the Home for Humanity Manifesto, which is wonderful. And I suggest each and everyone who listens to this interview to read this, because the first point about the universe is a single family. I really would like to join that this all unity, or this all oneness, and this holistic vision is really decisive for our view of ourselves and of the world. And then to engage ourselves really confidentially in service to our and the world family. And about the second point, that the earth is our shared and sacred home. Yeah, I mean, maybe you know also this old speaking saying, we need the earth, but Mother Earth don't need us. So we must finally really start to protect the earth and the resources for our children and the next generations. And we must finally share all the gifts and goods from Mother Earth in a, really justly among humanity. And then I'm also sure if we reach this point all over the continents on Earth, then that silence and peace will immediately return to this Earth house of humanity. And the third point is also really, really urgent about to renew this culture of humanity. And from my point of view, the foundation, therefore, is always love, respect, trust, and justice, a real global justice. Because we as human beings can finally only have a good conscience when all the people can cover their basic needs. And Mother Earth is also able to heal again. That's it. Also why it's so urgent. I mean, this problem with this yearly climate councils that happen around the world. And we have since years, we have the solutions. We have an enormous call to action, but they don't follow their talk, and they don't sign the documents. They don't bring it into manifestation. So that's why I loved also so much this movement of these young people all around the world to call for action, the adults and the politicians to really act now, because we know what to do and there is no time left. And there is also kind of soon we reach in nature and this destruction, how to say, the so-called point of no return. So now we can still change, we can still heal, but I would say in 2 or 3 years it's too late. And even if we start, we cannot heal Mother Earth, and we will finally destroy ourselves. I mean, this is like a suicide in steps. So that's why this point is also so urgent. And this leads to the fourth point with the ancient indigenous wisdom that we try to bring together. Also, one of my books, the Gaia Legacy, with the 14 power plays around the earth. I've worked on all the continents with the elders of these different tribes. And it's amazing the knowledge that they kept for us, like guardians. Also here, the solutions, the ways are here, but we not yet see them or respect or accept them. But I have worked with so many of them. I followed their protocols like I always do, proving, and I came to the same result. And it's wonderful how we can raise our consciousness, and also on reconnecting with nature, Stephanie, if we learn from them. And they are here, they are sharing their wisdom if we listen to them. So this is really, for me, also a main point. And the fifth about the world as a true home for humanity. I mean, the consciousness of all unity, of all oneness in mankind. This, if we like recognize ourselves and humanity as a big family. I mean, this is finally the big or the main goal in this time of turning, because this is the only one the only way how we can reach this mass consciousness. So it's a lot to do, but it's very interesting, it's very helpful, and it's serving yourself, your own path, and in the same time, you are serving the mass consciousness and Mother Earth.